Hey there, travelers. Before we dive into today's story, drop a comment below telling us where you're tuning in from. Now let's begin our journey into the unknown. 4 years ago, I taught religious studies at the University of Kansas in Lawrence. I grew up Baptist in Hutchinson, with a faith that felt solid as Kansas bedrock. My parents raised me and my sister Judy to believe that God was good, prayer was powerful, and righteousness was its own reward. Then Judy vanished. She was 28, drove to Colorado alone for a weekend retreat. She called me from Woodland Park on a Friday evening, said the mountains were beautiful, said she felt peaceful. That was the last time anyone heard her voice. Her phone went dead. Her credit card stopped being used. The rental car disappeared. Colorado authorities searched for 6 weeks and found nothing. I prayed. God, how I prayed. Hours on my knees in the university chapel, begging for answers. The silence felt like mockery. My faith eroded day by day, prayer by unanswered prayer, until I looked at the cross and felt nothing but contempt. If God wouldn't answer, maybe something else would. I quit my job, sold my house, bought a van and filled it with books on demonology, ritual magic, spiritualism, anything that promised contact with the unseen. I told myself it was academic, but that was a lie. I was looking for Judy in the darkness because I couldn't find her in the light. The first real encounter happened 14 months ago, and it taught me that some doors should never be opened. Dr. Philip Harmon, a former colleague, called me in March. His nephew Tyler was hospitalized in Topeka after trying a spirit contact ritual with friends. Tyler hadn't spoken since. The doctors found nothing physically wrong. They found things in that basement, Ray, Philip said. Things that scared the police. Mrs. Caldwell met me at the curb of their suburban split level, a thin woman with exhausted eyes. The family had evacuated 3 days prior. Tyler and his friends found instructions online, treated it like a game, she explained, voice shaking. When we got home, all four were screaming, backed into a corner. Tyler hasn't spoken since. The others won't say what they saw. She handed me a key. Please, if you can figure out what they did, maybe we can undo it. I should have said no. Instead, I took the key. The house smelled wrong. Sweet rot like meat left in a warm car. The basement door stood open, the smell intensifying. I descended into an unfinished basement with concrete floor and exposed beams. In the center, an amateur ritual circle. They'd drawn symbols from the Lesser Key of Solomon in marker and chalk, placed 5 candles, scattered salt patterns they didn't understand. But what happened after was wrong. The candles had melted into twisted shapes. The salt had turned black, crystallized into obsidian-like daggers. Dark stains ran down the concrete walls, still wet. I touched one. Thick, viscous. The rotten smell made me gag. Not blood. Something that had no business existing. I was examining a symbol that seemed to pulse when I heard breathing. Deep, rhythmic, like damaged bellows. I spun with my flashlight. Nothing. The breathing circled me, but I saw only shadows. Who's there? The breathing stopped. Silence pressed against my eardrums. Then the temperature plummeted. Frost forming on the pipes. The walls began to weep. That dark substance seeping from solid concrete, oozing down, spreading toward the circle. Then I heard Judy's voice. Ray? Tears stung my eyes. Judy, where are you? I'm here. Can't you see me? I spun with my flashlight. Nothing but spreading darkness. I don't see you. Look closer, Ray. Look at what you've become. The tone shifted. Colder, mocking. My stomach clenched. This isn't you, I whispered. Multiple voices laughed, including Judy's. How would you know? You haven't heard her in over 3 years. Maybe death changed her. Maybe she's angry you never found her. Or maybe I'm just something that knows what you want to hear. Something that's been waiting for someone desperate enough to listen when the dark answers back. The substance pulled away from the walls, coalescing. I watched in horror as it formed a 7-foot shape, roughly human, but wrong. Arms too long, legs bent backward, proportions shifting as I looked. The torso was translucent, showing geometric organs pulsing with sickly light. The face had dozens of eyes opening and closing across its surface, all focusing on me simultaneously. You opened this door, Ray Haysbert, it said, voice vibrating through everything. Not these children. They fumbled. But you've been searching, calling out. Did you think there would be no consequences? I couldn't move. The thing flowed closer, fingers trailing smoke where they moved. I could tell you where she is, it whispered with Judy's voice. What happened in those mountains? Whether she suffered, called your name, whether she's waiting or simply gone. Erased, nothing but cooling meat in a forgotten place. Tell me. The words escaped before I could stop them. The creature's eyes blinked in sequence. That's not how this works. Knowledge has a price. You're not ready to pay it. Or, not yet. It leaned closer, heat radiating despite the frigid air. But keep looking. Keep searching. Eventually, you'll find someone willing to make you an offer you can't refuse. And when you finally give up everything you are for the answer you need... All the eyes became Judy's eyes, brown and utterly wrong. We'll be waiting. The creature dissolved, evaporating within seconds. Temperature rose. The smell dissipated. The basement looked almost normal again. But my hands shook so badly, I could barely hold my flashlight. I stumbled upstairs and vomited on the lawn. Mrs. Caldwell came running. Dr. Haysbert, what happened? Hire an exorcist, I managed. A real one. Catholic, Episcopal, doesn't matter. Don't let anyone else in that basement until it's been cleansed. But what did you... I saw what your son saw. Thank God it was just playing with him. I drove back to Hutchinson, hands trembling on the wheel. That night I tried to process what had happened. I'd wanted proof that something existed beyond the veil. I'd gotten it. The terrifying part wasn't that demons were real. It was that I still wanted to keep searching. Even knowing what it was, part of me had wanted to say yes. Tyler Caldwell never spoke again. The family moved to Texas. Tyler lived in a group home for profound psychological trauma. I added it all to my notebook. First real encounter. First time something knew my name without being told. I should have stopped. I didn't. The second encounter came 4 months later, in July. The Kansas heat was brutal, temperatures pushing past 100, fields withering despite irrigation, the kind of summer that felt angry. David Pritchard called from outside Salina. He'd heard about me through online forums. His wife Helen had something wrong with her. Doctors couldn't explain it. Police thought he was crazy. We tried something we shouldn't have tried, he said. And now Helen isn't Helen anymore. The Pritchard farm sat off a county road, surrounded by scorched wheat fields. A young man with his arm in a cast sat on the porch steps, head in his hands. David met me in the driveway. 50s, sun-weathered, with wild eyes that said his reality had broken. Thank you for coming, he said, grip strong but trembling. I know how this sounds, but... I don't think you're insane, Mr. Pritchard. Tell me what happened. Inside, the air conditioning provided relief, but the house had a faint, unpleasant smell. All curtains were drawn despite bright afternoon. That's my son Marcus on the porch, David said, pouring iced tea with shaking hands. He found a book in the barn, his grandparents' old belongings. Leather cover, no title, filled with handwritten instructions for contacting spirits. Helen had become obsessed after her mother died last year. She thought maybe there was a way to reach her, say goodbye properly. 3 weeks ago, she'd tried a ritual alone while David checked equipment and Marcus was in town. When David returned 2 hours later, Helen stood in the living room surrounded by candles and ash symbols. She turned to look at him, and he knew immediately something was catastrophically wrong. It's her body, David whispered, tears streaming. Looks like her, sounds like her sometimes, but it's not Helen. Whatever's inside her, it's not my wife. Hospital tests came back normal. Doctors sent her home with psychiatric recommendations. But the incident started. Helen's strength increased dramatically. She'd gripped Marcus's arm and broken it with one hand. She spoke in voices that weren't hers, reciting Latin neither understood. She knew private things she shouldn't know, and sometimes when she moved, joints bent too far, head turned at painful angles, quick movements that seemed to blur. We tried to help her ourselves, David said miserably. Marcus found exorcism instructions online. 3 days ago we tried. That's when things got worse. I noticed overturned furniture, deep scratches in the hardwood, like metal dragged across it, or fingernails that shouldn't cut through wood. Where is she now? Upstairs bedroom, locked, salt across the threshold. A tremendous crash came from above. David flinched but didn't move. She tries to get out constantly, but she can't cross the salt line. I should have left. Can I talk to her? David looked terrified. I don't think that's... I need to understand what we're dealing with. We climbed the stairs, Marcus hovering near the door. The smell grew stronger. Meat gone bad mixed with burning plastic. The bedroom door showed scratches gouged from inside, a crack where something hit it repeatedly. A pristine salt line crossed the threshold. Helen? David called out, voice cracking. There's someone here who wants to talk. Furniture dragged across the floor. A shadow blocked the light under the door. Who? Helen's voice, but the cadence was wrong. Too precise, carefully imitating human speech. My name is Ray Haysbert, I said. I'm a researcher. I study religious practices. A researcher? How academic. Tell me, Ray Haysbert, do you believe in God? The question caught me off guard. That's complicated. No, it's simple. Yes or no. I thought about Judy, about unanswered prayers. I used to. Perfect. Then you understand. God doesn't answer, but we do. What are you? So many names across so many centuries. You can call me a tenant, a guest in this accommodating flesh. David made a strangled sound. I steadied him. Why Helen? Why not? She called out, opened herself, asked for contact with the departed. The dead don't speak, Ray. They rot in silence, but we're always listening, and when someone calls with sufficient desperation, we answer. Let her go. No. The finality made my blood run cold. This body is mine now. I've waited decades for an invitation. Why would I surrender that? Because it's not yours, I said. She has a husband, a son. Had a life. Now she has me. Fair trade, don't you think? David sobbed. Please give me back my wife. The temperature plummeted. Frost crept across the walls from the door. Give. The voice deepened with painful harmonics. You think politeness will move me? I have been nameless in the void for longer than your species has drawn breath. And you want me to abandon this gift because you ask nicely? The door shuddered. The salt line held, but pressure made the air thick. However, the voice returned to Helen's tone but maintaining that wrongness. I can be persuaded. For the right price. Another vessel. Another invitation. Give me that, and I'll leave this weakening body. Another few weeks and it'll be useless anyway. Give me a fresh host and Helen can have this shell back. No, I said firmly. Then Helen dies with me inside her. And when this body fails, I'll return to the shadows. But Helen will be consumed. I've been eating her memories since I moved in. David looked at me desperately. We can't just let her die. We're not trading someone else's life. There has to be another way. There isn't. Offer me a new host, or watch this one deteriorate. Those are your options. The door burst open, wood splitting. Helen Pritchard stood there. Her joints were hyperextended, legs bent backward, arms hanging loose. Her head tilted 90 degrees, neck twisted impossibly. But she smiled, eyes pure black, no whites, just endless darkness. Let me show you what I can do before it breaks completely. Her jaw opened wider than human anatomy allowed, skin splitting at the corners, blood running down her chin. She stepped forward. David and I scrambled back, but Helen stopped at the salt line. She swayed there, pushing against an invisible barrier. Then she swept the salt aside with one hand. Helen's body launched forward with inhuman speed, grabbed David by the throat, lifted him off the ground effortlessly. Stop! I shouted. Helen's head swiveled with a grinding sound. Give me a host, or I crush his throat. David's face turned purple. Marcus screamed from downstairs. Come up here, boy, Helen called mockingly. Your body is young, strong. I could do wonderful things with it. Don't you dare, David choked out. I didn't think. I rushed forward with my phone playing the only thing I had, a recording of the Lord's Prayer from my research files. "Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." Helen's body convulsed, dropping David. The thing screamed, not Helen's voice but metal tearing. Helen contorted, spine bending backward until her head nearly touched her heels. Black eyes rolled back showing whites. Blood poured from her nose, ears, mouth. "No!" it shrieked. "That name has no power. He abandoned this place. He doesn't listen. Get out!" I shouted, pressing closer. "Leave her, now!" Helen's body lifted off the ground, levitating, arms and legs splayed like a grotesque puppet. Her back arched beyond survival, bones cracking. Her mouth opened in a silent scream, wider and wider, jaw dislocating, and something dark poured out like smoke. It filled the hallway, pure malevolence pressing against everything. For a moment I saw it truly. Writhing shadow and rage with too many limbs, eyes opening and closing. It looked at me with ancient hatred. Then it vanished, and Helen's body dropped. David crawled to her, sobbing. "She's alive! She's breathing!" Marcus came up, saw his parents, broke down completely. Helen opened her eyes 3 minutes later. Brown again. Human again. She looked at David confused and terrified. "David? What happened? Why do I hurt so much?" She remembered nothing. The last thing, lighting candles, feeling suddenly sleepy and cold. Paramedics came. Doctors found multiple fractures. Spine, ribs, jaw. Damage like a severe car accident. They couldn't explain it. Helen spent 6 weeks in the hospital, underwent surgeries, would walk with a cane forever. But she was alive. She was herself. Before I left, David and I sat on the porch while Marcus stayed with unconscious Helen, waiting for the ambulance. "You saved her," David said quietly. "That prayer worked. Barely. And I don't even believe anymore. Doesn't that seem strange?" David looked at his scorched fields. "Maybe faith isn't about believing. Maybe it's about remembering what we knew was true once, before the world broke us." I thought about that a lot afterward. 2 encounters with genuine demons. Both times I'd survived. Both times I'd been reminded there was still power in old prayers. Even from someone who felt abandoned by heaven. But I still hadn't found Judy. That thing confirmed what Topeka implied. The dead don't speak. Which meant Judy was either alive beyond my reach, or simply gone. I couldn't accept that. Wouldn't. So I kept looking. Kept following leads. Kept knocking on forbidden doors. I added the Pritchard encounter to my notebooks. Second confirmation. Second time something mentioned God with contempt. As if the divine was a joke they'd stopped finding funny. I drove back to Hutchinson and sat alone in the dark, wondering if maybe the demons were right. Maybe God had abandoned this place. Maybe we were all fumbling in darkness, calling out to heaven that stopped listening. But I remembered Helen's eyes when she woke up. Brown and human and grateful to be alive. Something had driven that creature out. Whether faith or memory or stubborn hope, something worked. I fell asleep not sure what I believed anymore, but knowing one thing, knowing the darkness was real. The monsters were real. And somewhere in that maze of shadows, there might still be answers about Judy. I just had to walk further into the nightmare to find them. The months after the Pritchard farm changed something in me. I'd seen genuine evil wearing human skin, watched a woman's body twisted into configurations that defied anatomy, heard voices that shouldn't exist speaking truths they had no right to know. And I'd learned that even without faith, the old prayers still carried weight. But knowledge comes at a price. And I was about to discover just how steep that price could be. I'd been documenting fringe religious groups for 18 months now, cataloging their practices in notebooks that filled 2 cardboard boxes in the back of my van. Most were harmless. Misguided maybe, desperate certainly, but ultimately just people fumbling for meaning in a universe that felt empty. But some groups weren't fumbling. Some knew exactly what they were reaching for. 3 weeks after Helen Pritchard was released, I found a pamphlet under my windshield. The Seekers of the Veil. Speak with those you've lost. Guaranteed contact. Springfield, Missouri address. The word guaranteed hooked me. I called that night. A woman named Diane answered, warm and professional. And our next gathering is Friday at 7. Small group. Very safe. Everyone's experienced loss. You mean contacting the dead? We facilitate communication with those who've transitioned. Would you like to join us? I wrote down the address on Walnut Street. What should I bring? Just yourself and an open heart. And Ray, whatever happened to your sister, we might help you find real answers. She knew my name. I hadn't given it. Friday, I drove to Springfield. The Victorian house looked immaculate. 3 stories, wraparound porch, stained glass windows. Cars lined the street. Through windows I saw people gathering like a book club meeting. Diane Mercer answered the door. Mid-40s, auburn hair, kind eyes. You must be Ray. I'm glad you came. How did you know my name on the phone? Reverse lookup on your cell. We like to know who's coming. Security. Reasonable. But my instincts prickled. 10 people sat in a circle. Young to old. Diverse. All carrying the weight of grief I recognized immediately. Everyone. This is Ray. He lost his sister 4 years ago. I sat between a young woman with tear-stained cheeks and an older man staring at his hands. Diane explained their process. Meditation, focused intention, ritual elements to create openings in the veil. Not summoning, she insisted. Invitation. You're talking about summoning, I said flatly. We prefer invitation. We ask respectfully. Sometimes they answer, sometimes they don't. But when they do, she softened. It brings closure. The young woman beside me spoke up. I talked to my mom 2 weeks ago. Really talked. She told me things only she would know. Said she was okay, not in pain, that I should stop blaming myself. Tears spilled. 3 years of guilt. Gone in 10 minutes. Others nodded, sharing similar stories, all sounding genuine. I thought about Topeka. How do you know you're talking to your loved ones? Not something else pretending? Diane grew serious. Verification protocols. Specific questions only the deceased would know. And genuine contact has a quality. You just know. If something else comes through, we close immediately. We have protections, safeguards. So shall we begin? Diane asked. Ray, you can participate or observe. I should have observed. I'll participate. The ritual started simply. Diane dimmed lights, lit 13 candles, asked us to join hands. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. Feel the presence of those beside you. She spoke in an ancient language I didn't recognize, harsh and angular. The temperature dropped. My breath misted. She switched to English. We stand at the threshold between worlds. We ask those who've passed to make their presence known. Minutes of silence. Then the young woman beside me gasped. Mom? Mom, is that you? Eyes closed, tears streaming. She's here. I can feel her. Others reacted similarly. The older man sobbed quietly. A middle-aged woman smiled with radiant joy. I felt nothing, just cold and stranger's hands. Until I heard her voice. Ray. Judy's voice, clear and immediate, as if she stood behind me. Ray, I'm here. I'm finally here. My heart seized. Judy? I'm here, big brother. The voice came from everywhere. Several people opened their eyes, confused. Where are you? What happened? I got lost in the mountains. The car went off the road. So cold, Ray. But it's warm now. Peaceful now. Relief flooded through me. You're okay? I'm more than okay. I'm free. Just love and light and peace. Exactly what Judy would say. She'd always been the spiritual one. Where's your body? So I can bring you home. Pause. Candle flames flickered violently. Does it matter? My body is just a shell. It matters to me, please. Longer pause. When the voice returned, something had shifted. Colorado, Pike National Forest. There's a lake. I can't remember the name. But Ray, stop looking. Stop digging into dark places. You're going to get hurt. I don't care. I need to find you. You already found me. I'm right here. Isn't this enough? Around the circle, others had their own conversations. But I suddenly felt very alone. Prove it's really you. Tell me what you gave me for my 30th birthday. Silence. Candles flickered violently. Ray, Judy always remembered birthdays. If you're really her, you'd know. Memories fade here. What matters is, what did you give me? Temperature plummeted. Frost formed on windows. People gasped. The voice returned, no longer Judy's. Multiple tones speaking in unison. She gave you a leather journal and a pen engraved with your initials. She hoped you'd write again, return to creative work you'd abandoned. She said teaching was important, but you were meant for more. Does that satisfy your test, Ray Haysbert? My blood turned to ice. That was exactly right, down to what Judy said when she gave it. But the voice was no longer pretending to be human. What are you? Others noticed something was wrong. The young woman opened her eyes, fear crossing her face. We are listeners. Watchers, the ones who wait in the spaces between, and you've been calling to us so long, how could we not answer? Diane's eyes snapped open. Everyone stop! Break the circle, now! Before anyone could move, all candles extinguished simultaneously. The screaming started, not from us, from everywhere. Voices layered over voices. The darkness felt alive, and I felt multiple somethings moving through the room. Sanctuary, someone shouted. Light blazed as Diane and others pulled flashlights and phones. In the erratic illumination, I saw distortions in the air, human-shaped voids moving with predatory intent. One flowed toward the young woman. She collapsed, screaming. Everyone out! Diane shouted. Back door, go! Chaos erupted. I tried to help the fallen woman, but Diane grabbed my arm. Leave her! She's possessed! We need to seal the room! I looked back. The woman stood now, moving wrong. Joints bending unnaturally, head tilted too far, black eyes, smiling at me. Diane yanked me out, pulling salt from nowhere and drawing a line across the threshold. Others sealed windows. We locked ourselves in the kitchen while things screamed and raged in the living room. What did you bring in here? A man demanded, glaring at me. You questioned it, Diane said quietly, pale. You challenged it, and it revealed itself. This is what happens when someone breaks protocol. Your protocol let demons in. No. My protocol was working until you decided to test it. Her voice was hard. We had genuine contacts until you had to prove yourself smarter. You gave those things permission to stop pretending. The sounds grew louder, multiple voices in unison, saying things that hurt to hear. How do we fix this? We don't. Diane pulled out her phone. I'm calling Father William. You have a priest on speed dial? Of course. This isn't our first incident, though it is our worst. Congratulations. Father William arrived 40 minutes later with 2 clergy. He recognized me immediately. Mr. Haysbert, I warned you this path would destroy you. The exorcism took 6 hours. We waited in the kitchen, hearing prayers, Latin, terrible screaming. By dawn, it was over. Father William emerged looking 10 years older, vestments stained dark. Barbara will live. The entity is expelled, but she'll need extensive support. The human mind isn't meant to be a battleground. And the others who made contact? False contacts, all of them. These entities are expert manipulators. The dead don't speak through parlor rituals, Ms. Mercer. He turned to me. You're marked. These things know you. They're drawn to you. Stop this insanity before it's too late. God didn't answer when I needed him. And demons will answer every time. That's what makes them dangerous. He collected his things. Next time we meet, I may not be able to help you. Diane approached me as I gathered my things. You're not welcome back. Barbara's trauma is on you. Your ritual brought them in. Our ritual worked hundreds of times before you showed up. We were helping people until you couldn't just let us have this. Her voice broke. Get out. Stop investigating groups like ours. You're a plague. Everywhere you go, people get hurt. I drove back to Hutchinson in silence, watching sunrise paint the sky orange and red, like the world was on fire. Maybe Diane was right. Maybe I was the problem. But something had known details about Judy that only she would know, which meant these things had access to information about her. I just needed to find a way to extract it without destroying everyone around me. The answer came 2 months later. I'd been lying low, avoiding rituals, sticking to research. But the hunger for answers ate at me. Every night I dreamed about Judy cold and afraid in those mountains. A business card appeared in my mailbox on a Tuesday. No envelope, just tucked between bills. Reverend Solomon Kane, The Church of the Descending Flame. Truth through Communion. Joplin, Missouri address. Handwritten on back, "You're asking the wrong questions of the wrong beings. Come find real answers." I should have thrown it away. Instead, I drove to Joplin that weekend. The church operated from a converted warehouse on Joplin's south side. Outside, it looked abandoned. Inside, 30 or 40 people gathered in a space transformed into something between church and theater. Makeshift pews, candles, walls covered with protective wards and heretical passages. Reverend Solomon Kane stood on stage, early 50s, silver hair, commanding presence, modified clergy vestments, black with red trim, adorned with non-Christian symbols. "Welcome, brothers and sisters," he said. "Tonight we discuss a difficult truth. Not all angels remained loyal, and those who fell carry knowledge the divine would keep from humanity." I listened as Kane outlined his theology. Demons weren't enemies, but teachers. They'd been punished for refusing to keep humanity ignorant, for wanting to share truth and power. "The church teaches you to fear them," Kane continued. "But fear is control. What if these fallen beings can answer your questions? Show you truths about life and death? About the ones you've lost?" A woman raised her hand. "How do we know they won't hurt us, won't lie?" "The key is respect and boundaries. We don't summon, we invite. We offer temporary communion with our physical forms, and in exchange, they share knowledge. Fair trade with clear terms." "You're talking about possession," I said loudly from the back. Heads turned. Kane smiled, unsurprised. "Mr. Haysbert, I'm glad you got my invitation. Yes, voluntary, controlled possession. Limited time, full protections. Would you like to see how it works?" The demonstration happened in a smaller room off the main space. Concrete floor, metal walls. Nothing that could be used as a weapon. A circle was drawn in salt and ash, with symbols marking cardinal points. A single chair sat in the center. A young man, maybe 25, volunteered. His name was Thomas, and he'd been part of Kane's congregation for 6 months. "I've done this 4 times before," Thomas explained as he sat in the chair. "Each time I learned something incredible. Last time I spoke with an entity that showed me mathematical proofs that don't exist in human knowledge yet. I'm a graduate student in physics. This stuff could revolutionize the field." "And the cost?" I asked. Thomas shrugged. "An hour of time. Some mild disorientation afterward. Totally worth it." Kane began the ritual. It was more elaborate than what I'd seen in Springfield. Multiple invocations, symbols drawn in the air with consecrated ash, specific names spoken in languages that hurt to hear. But there was also a structure to it, a precision that suggested genuine knowledge rather than amateur fumbling. The entity that responded came quickly. One moment Thomas was sitting normally, the next his posture changed completely. He sat straighter, head tilted at a curious angle. And when he opened his eyes, they glowed with faint amber light. "Greetings, Reverend," the thing said through Thomas's mouth. "You called, and I came. What knowledge do you seek this evening?" "Not for me tonight," Kane said calmly. "For our guest. Mr. Haysbert has questions about a missing person." The glowing eyes fixed on me. "Ah yes, the Seeker. The one who knocks on every forbidden door. We've been watching you, Ray Haysbert." My skin crawled. "What do you know about my sister?" "Many things, but knowledge has a price, as you've learned. What are you willing to trade? What do you want?" The thing smiled with Thomas's face, but the expression was all wrong. "A simple trade. Let me commune with you the way I'm communing with young Thomas. 1 hour of your time, and I'll tell you everything you want to know about Judy Haysbert. Where she went, what happened, whether she still exists in any form." I looked at Kane. "Is it safe?" "As safe as we can make it. The circle provides protection. I maintain control of the ritual. If anything goes wrong, I can expel the entity immediately. But Mr. Haysbert, you should understand. This is a threshold you can't uncross. Once you allow one of them inside, even briefly, you're changed. Marked. Connected to them in ways that make you more vulnerable to future contact. I'm already marked, I said, remembering the Topeka creature's words. They already know me. Knowing you and residing within you are very different things. I looked at Thomas, or at the thing puppeting him. It watched me with inhuman patience, waiting for my decision. I thought about 4 years of searching. 4 years of dead ends, and unanswered prayers and doors that led only to more questions. This thing was offering me exactly what I'd been desperate to find. Answers about Judy. 1 hour, I confirmed. 1 hour. And then I'll leave peacefully, having fulfilled our bargain. You have my word. The word of a demon, I said bitterly, is often more reliable than the word of a man. We have no reason to lie when truth serves us better. We want you to trust us, Ray. To understand that we're not your enemies. We're simply alternative sources of information. I should have said no. Should have walked out right then. Instead, I stepped into the circle. Kane helped me sit in a second chair they brought in. Once I complete the transfer, he said quietly, you'll feel it enter. Don't fight it. The more you resist, the more painful it will be. Let it in, ask your questions, and when the hour is complete, I'll perform the expulsion. Understood? I nodded, mouth too dry to speak. Kane returned to his position at the edge of the circle and began the invocation. The entity left Thomas. I watched the light fade from his eyes as he slumped, unconscious but breathing. And for a moment, I felt something hovering in the air around me. A presence, vast and ancient and utterly alien. Then it poured into me. The sensation defied description. It wasn't physical pain, though my body screamed as if it were. It was the feeling of having every private thought, every hidden memory, every secret shame suddenly exposed and examined by something that viewed human consciousness the way we might view an insect under glass. I felt violated in ways I hadn't known were possible, invaded in spaces of myself I hadn't known existed. And then it spoke. Not out loud, but directly into my mind. Hello, Ray. Thank you for the invitation. Your mind is fascinating. So much pain, so much guilt, so much desperate love for a sister you couldn't save. Let me ease that burden. Let me show you what happened. Images flooded my consciousness. Judy driving through Colorado mountains, snow beginning to fall. Judy arguing with someone on the phone, the ex-boyfriend, bitter and cruel. Judy wiping away tears, distracted, not seeing the ice patch on the road until too late. The car sliding. Judy screaming as it crashed through a guardrail. The sickening plunge into darkness. The impact with freezing water. The car sinking, Judy trapped inside, fighting against her seatbelt, lungs burning as water rushed in. And in those final moments, Judy crying out for me. Ray, help me, please. Ray, I'm scared. I don't want to die like this. The vision ended. I was sobbing, barely aware of my physical body, completely consumed by the knowledge of my sister's terror. She died alone and afraid. The entity continued. She called your name with her last breath, and you were hundreds of miles away, completely unaware. You failed her, Ray. You let her die. Stop! I managed to gasp. But here's the interesting part. The entity's tone shifted, becoming almost gleeful. She's not completely gone. A piece of her consciousness, a fragment, remained trapped at the site of her death. She's been there for 4 years, Ray, alone, aware, suffering, every day, every hour, reliving those final moments of terror. And she's been calling for you. Can you hear her? And I could. Faintly, as if from a great distance, I heard Judy's voice screaming my name, over and over, an endless loop of terror. Where? I demanded. Where is she? Pike National Forest, Rampart Reservoir, on the northwest shore. 40 feet deep. The car is still there. Her body is still there. And that fragment of her soul is still there, trapped and screaming. Can I free her? Perhaps, but not alone. You'd need help. You'd need power. You'd need us. I felt it then, the offer beneath the information. This thing wasn't giving me answers out of kindness. It was baiting a trap. What do you want from me? What we've always wanted. A willing host. Not for an hour, Ray. Forever. Let us remain in this body, and we'll give you everything. The power to free Judy's soul. The knowledge to answer every question you've ever had. The strength to walk between worlds without fear. All you have to do is say yes. The temptation was overwhelming. After everything I'd been through, everything I'd sacrificed, this thing was offering me the ability to actually save Judy. To end her suffering, even if just a fragment of her. I was so close to saying yes. Then I heard it, faint but distinct. Another voice, not the entity's. Female. Familiar. Don't do it, Ray. Please don't do it. Remember what I told you. Remember your promise. Judy. Not the screaming fragment, but something else. A memory, maybe. Or maybe something more. Promise me you'll always be a good man. No matter what happens. Promise me you won't lose yourself. We'd been 8 and 6, playing in the backyard. She'd made me promise, made me swear on everything I held sacred. Get out, I whispered. The entity in my mind recoiled. What? Get out! I screamed it, both aloud and mentally. I don't want you. I don't accept your offer. Leave. Now. You fool. You have no idea what you're rejecting. Kane, get it out of me! I felt Kane's hands on my shoulders, heard him reciting the expulsion ritual in Latin. The entity fought, clawing at my consciousness, trying to maintain its grip. The pain was excruciating, like having my soul torn in half. But gradually, it released, withdrew, expelled. I collapsed on the floor, gasping, as the thing dissipated back into whatever void it came from. When I could finally focus again, I found Kane kneeling beside me, concern on his face. Are you all right? What happened? What? You weren't supposed to reject it. The deal was an hour. It tried to stay, I managed. Offered me everything if I'd just let it remain. Kane sat back, understanding crossing his features. Of course it did. That's what they do. The communion is never really about sharing knowledge. It's about finding hosts willing to surrender completely. He helped me sit up. You're stronger than I thought, Mr. Haysbert. Most people, when offered their heart's desire, can't say no. I almost didn't. I looked at him. How many of your congregation are still themselves? How many accepted the offer and never came back? His silence was answer enough. You're using them, I said. Horror and disgust mixing. You're recruiting hosts for these things. I'm offering a choice. They come to me seeking answers, seeking purpose, seeking something more than the empty existence modern life provides. I give them that. What they choose to do with it is their decision. You're a monster. Kane smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I'm a minister. I serve beings older and more powerful than your impotent god, and they reward me well for my service. He stood, brushing off his vestments. You got your answer, Mr. Haysbert. Rampart Reservoir, 40 feet deep, northwest shore. Go find your sister. Bring her home. And when you're ready to admit that the powers I serve can give you more than your faith ever could, you know where to find me. I staggered out of that warehouse, got in my van, and drove. Just drove. No destination. Watching the sun set and rise and set again. Sometime during that fugue, I ended up in a rest stop off I-44, where I finally broke down completely. I'd found my answer. I knew where Judy was. But the cost of that knowledge sat heavy in my soul. I'd invited something demonic inside me. I'd felt its presence in the most intimate corners of my consciousness, and I'd almost said yes to its offer. How much more could I sacrifice before there was nothing left of Ray Haysbert to save? I didn't know, but I knew I couldn't stop now, not when I was this close. I pulled out my phone and called the Colorado authorities, reporting a possible location for Judy's vehicle. Then I started driving west. It was time to bring my sister home. But first, I needed to make one more stop. Because after Springfield and Joplin, after demons and possession and seeing good people destroyed by forces they didn't understand, I'd learned something important. I couldn't do this alone anymore. I needed help, real help, and I knew exactly where to find it. Colorado authorities confirmed it 3 days later. Dive teams recovered Judy's car from Rampart Reservoir, exactly where the entity described, northwest shore, 40 feet down. Her remains were inside, still belted in. I identified her through dental records. 2 weeks later, I buried her in Hutchinson next to our parents. Small funeral, a few friends, distant cousins, me. I stood at her grave trying to feel closure, trying to feel anything other than hollow ache. But closure never came. Because now I knew the truth. And the truth was worse than not knowing. Judy died terrified and alone, calling my name. And according to that demon, a fragment of her consciousness had remained trapped, reliving those final moments for 4 years. Was that fragment still there? Still suffering? I was sitting at Judy's grave 3 weeks later, asking these questions to the cold November wind, when my phone rang. Unknown number. Ray Haysbert? A young male voice, frightened. I'm Michael Torres. I got your number from an online forum. People say you investigate supernatural things. There's something happening in Guthrie, Oklahoma. Something bad. People are dying, going crazy. I found evidence of a cult doing rituals. Big ones. They summoned something, and it's not going back. Call a priest. Call police. Not me. I did. Nobody believes me. You've seen this stuff. You know it's real. Please. If someone doesn't stop this... The line went dead. I tried calling back. No answer. I sat staring at my phone, torn. I'd promised myself, no more investigations. No more endangering people. But if something apocalyptic was happening in Guthrie, I might be one of the few equipped to recognize it. Every place I went, I left damage. But what if this time, not going meant worse damage? I drove to Guthrie. The town set north of Oklahoma City, about 12,000 people. Famous for Victorian architecture, it should have looked charming. Instead, it looked dying. Half the businesses were closed, windows dark or boarded. The few people I saw moved with heads down, avoiding eye contact. And there was a smell, faint but unmistakable. Rot and sulfur and something sickeningly sweet. I'd smelled that combination before. I found Michael Torres at a coffee shop on the edge of town. 23, Latino, exhausted eyes, shaking hands. Thank you for coming. I know you said you were done. Tell me what's happening. He showed me news articles from 3 months. Missing persons. 7 vanished. Violent crimes. Murder-suicide. Assaults. Arsons. Mass hysteria at a high school where 30 students saw the same hallucination. That's bad, but not supernatural. That's just what made the news. Michael leaned closer. My sister works at the hospital. 3 people came in speaking languages nobody recognized. Experts said the sounds were anatomically impossible for human vocal cords. My skin prickled. What happened to them? 2 died. Just stopped functioning. The 3rd is in the psych ward, unresponsive. Just stares, and occasionally speaks in that language. You think a cult is responsible? Michael nodded. 6 months ago, Vincent Harrow came to town. Rich, charismatic, started holding meetings at an old church outside town. I went to one meeting. He talked about God abandoning humanity, about other powers that could fill the void. He said the apocalypse was coming but could be a transformation. How many followers? Started with 20, now close to 60. They're preparing something. 2 weeks ago, they bought livestock. Last week, I saw them transporting elaborate metal framework with symbols carved into it. Took it all to the church. Show me where. We drove out as dusk fell. The church sat isolated on a hill, surrounded by dead fields. Old red brick, early 1900s, with a partially collapsed steeple. Dozens of cars packed the parking lot. Lights blazed inside. Even from a quarter-mile away, parked behind trees, I could hear chanting. Not any language I recognized. The syllables felt wrong, angular and harsh, hurting my ears. They've been doing this every night for a week, Michael whispered. Building up to something. Tonight feels different. I got out and started walking toward the church. "What are you doing?" Michael hissed. "Getting a closer look. Stay here." I circled to the back, where a broken window gave me a view inside. The interior was gutted. No pews, floor torn up to expose dirt. In the center, a metal framework rose 15 feet high, covered in writhing symbols. Inside it, a man hung suspended by chains. Not dead. Breathing. But his skin had a grayish cast, black veins spiderwebbing across his torso. Around the framework, 60 people stood in circles, chanting in unison. At the front, arms raised, stood Vincent Harrow. Tall, 50s, silver hair, handsome in a televangelist way. Modified robes with symbols stitched in red. "Brothers and sisters," his voice carried. The chanting stopped. "For 6 months we've prepared. Tonight we complete the great work." The crowd murmured approval. "The world is broken. God has abandoned us. But we found another way." He gestured to the suspended man. "Brother Marcus volunteered to be our vessel, our doorway. Through him, we'll invite one of the ancient powers to manifest physically. Not a brief visitation, but full incarnation. And when it arrives, it will remake this reality into something better." The crowd cheered. These weren't desperate amateurs. These were true believers. Harrow pulled out a ceremonial knife with a blade that seemed to drink light. "We begin with blood, with sacrifice, with the breaking of old laws." He approached the suspended man and drove the knife into his chest. Marcus screamed. But the sound was wrong, too deep, multiple voices screaming through his throat. Blood poured down, flowing into carved channels that formed a massive sigil beneath the framework. I had to stop this. But I was one person against 60 fanatics, and something already gathering, a presence making the air feel heavy. I pulled out my phone to call Michael. But before I could dial, everything went catastrophically wrong. Marcus's body convulsed. Black veins spread like infection. His eyes opened, glowing orange. When he spoke, the voice wasn't human. "I am here!" The words physically pushed against me, cracking the window. Inside, several cult members collapsed, blood streaming from their ears. "Yes!" Harrow shouted. "Speak, Great One! Tell us your name!" The thing in Marcus smiled with pure malevolence. "You want my name? I am called Legend, for we are many, and you've been most accommodating in building us a door." Harrow's expression faltered. "Door? No. We summoned you as a single entity. You summoned us as fools. This vessel is just the anchor. Through him, we'll bring thousands more. Your town will become our harvest." The framework exploded with black energy. The suspended body screamed as something poured out. Not liquid or gas, but malevolence given form. Tendrils reached for cult members. The first person touched, a woman, seized and collapsed. When she stood, movements were wrong. Joints bent incorrectly. Eyes glowing orange. Second person. Third. Fourth. Harrow tried to run. The smoke caught him, poured into his mouth and nose. He fought, screaming, clawing his face, then went still. When he straightened, he wasn't Vincent Harrow anymore. In under a minute, every person was possessed. 60 bodies, no longer controlled by humans. Through them, something ancient and hungry stared out. The thing wearing Harrow's body turned glowing eyes toward my hiding place. And we have a guest. Raymond Haysbert, the Seeker. "Did you enjoy feeling us inside you in Joplin?" I ran. Crashed through underbrush back to Michael's car, lungs burning. This was the mistake that would end everything. I hadn't just knocked on a forbidden door. I'd found the door to hell itself. "Drive!" I shouted. "Go!" Michael floored it. Behind us, figures emerged. 60 possessed bodies moving in perfect synchronization, no longer bound by human limitations. We made it to town as darkness fell, and I saw what Legion had already done. Guthrie was dying. People staggered through streets, collapsing, convulsing. Others attacked each other with savage brutality. Fire in 3 locations, and that smell intensified. Rot and sulfur and burning flesh. "What's happening?" Michael gasped. "It's spreading. The possession. Viral. Exponential." I pulled out my phone. "We need to evacuate. No signal." Neither phone worked. From the church direction, laughter, hundreds of voices in unison. There's nowhere to run, Raymond. This town is ours, and soon, the next. We've been waiting for someone foolish enough to open a door this wide. Possessed cult members walked into town. Everywhere they went, others fell. 1 became 2, became 4, became 8. We have to stop this, I said, though I had no idea how. In the movies, you call an exorcist, Michael said. Father William. I tried his number. Miraculously, it connected. Mr. Haysbert, weary voice. I wondered when you'd call. What disaster now? Father, I need help. Guthrie, Oklahoma. I know. I'm watching the news. They're calling it a gas leak. But I know what it is. I can feel it. Long pause. You opened this door, didn't you? I didn't mean... Intention matters less than consequences. This is catastrophic. Can you help? No. This is beyond me. Beyond any human authority. You've manifested something that requires... He trailed off. Requires what? Intervention. The kind not seen in centuries. The kind mortals can't summon. His voice softened. Guthrie is lost. The best we can do is contain this. If you're still there, leave, now. I can't abandon these people. They're already gone. What walks in their bodies now is something else. Save yourself. The line went dead. I sat in Michael's car watching people stagger and fall and rise with glowing eyes. The church bell tolled. Impossible, the steeple had collapsed. A deep sound calling something. Then I heard her voice. Ray. Not Judy. Something else. Something that felt like sunlight, clean water, the first breath after drowning. Ray, look up. I looked through the windshield, a light descending. Not a star, not a plane. It grew brighter as it fell, too pure, too white, carrying harmonics that made my eyes water. What is that? Michael whispered. I knew. Deep in my uncorrupted soul, I knew. An answer to a prayer I didn't think anyone was listening to. The light hit Guthrie's center. No explosion, just light. Brilliant, overwhelming, absolute. It spread outward, and where it touched, the possessed collapsed. The screaming began. Not human. The entities being expelled, torn from their hosts. Metal tearing, glass shattering, reality breaking. The light formed into something, not quite a shape, but present in a way that made everything else seem less real. Vast, ancient, carrying power that made Legion look like a candle next to the sun. Legion tried to fight. Possessed bodies convulsed, resisting, screaming defiance in ancient languages. The light spoke one word. I didn't understand the language, but I felt absolute divine command, unquestionable authority of something that existed before time and would exist after. Legion shattered. Not expelled, destroyed. The orange glow faded from hundreds of eyes simultaneously. The possessing forces were ripped apart and scattered into nothing. The light turned toward me. I should have been terrified, but I felt no fear, just a profound sense of being seen, truly seen, down to every shadow in my soul. It spoke directly into my consciousness, not violating like the demon, like coming home. Raymond Haysbert, you've walked far into darkness seeking answers. You've put yourself and others at risk. You've knocked on every forbidden door, demanding the universe explain itself. I know, I'm sorry. Are you? Or simply exhausted? I had no answer. Your sister is at peace, Raymond. She has been at peace since her soul separated from her body. The fragment that entity described, a lie, a lure. Judith Ann Haysbert rests in the place prepared for her. She does not suffer. She is found. Tears streamed down my face. Then why didn't you answer? 4 years I prayed. Because you were not ready to hear. Because some answers come only after we've exhausted every other path. Because I do not bend to human demands. I am what I am. And my silence is not absence. The light pulsed. I felt a weight lift from my chest. Your sister's remains rest in Rampart Reservoir. You've already recovered them. Already buried her with honor. That chapter is closed. Now you must choose: continue walking in darkness, causing destruction, Or step back into the light and live? I don't know how to live anymore. Then learn. You are Raymond Haysbert, child of God, brother to Judith, seeker of truth. Your search is over. The questions that remain are not for mortals to answer. Let them go. What about them? I gestured to collapsed people. Most will live, their bodies damaged, minds traumatized, but they retain their souls. Several were consumed before I arrived. Those are beyond mortal help, but the majority will wake, confused and hurting, but human. And Harrow? Vincent Harrow made his choices. He will face consequences. But that's not your concern. Your concern is healing. Return home. Bury your notebooks. Release your obsession. If you wish to help others who face these forces, do so with humility and wisdom, not pride and obsession. The light began to fade. Wait, why did you save us? Why intervene now after all this time? The presence paused, and I heard something almost like warmth. Because you finally asked. Not demanded, not challenged, but asked. With humility, with genuine need. And because sometimes the answer to 4 years of prayer comes in a single moment of grace. Remember this. The divine does not operate on human schedules. The light vanished, leaving normal darkness and the lingering sensation of having touched infinity. The aftermath took weeks to sort out. Emergency services descended on Guthrie. 60 cult members were found in various states of psychological collapse. The medical examinations showed severe physical trauma consistent with, well, no one could explain what it was consistent with. 17 people died. The ones the entity had fully consumed before the intervention. Vincent Harrow was among them. His body was found in the church, burned from the inside out, as if something had tried to escape through his skin. Michael Torres survived, though he spent 3 days in the hospital being treated for shock. Before I left Oklahoma, I visited him. What happened out there? He asked. I saw the light, but then I blacked out. When I woke up, it was over. Divine intervention, I said simply. The real kind. He studied me. You look different, less haunted. I got my answer. Finally. After everything, I got what I needed. Was it worth it? I thought about Tyler Caldwell, catatonic. Helen Pritchard, crippled. Barbara from Springfield, traumatized. All the people I'd hurt in my obsessive search. No, I admitted. It wasn't. But I can't undo what I've done. All I can do is try to do better going forward. I drove back to Hutchinson and did exactly what the divine presence had told me to do. I burned every notebook, every piece of research, everything connected to my 4-year descent into the occult. Well, almost everything. I kept one journal, the last one, and in it I wrote this account, not as a guide for others, but as a warning. If you're reading this because you've lost someone and you're desperate for answers, I understand. God knows I understand. But please, listen to someone who went as far down that path as you can go and barely came back. The occult will answer when you call. Demons will give you exactly what you think you want. They'll wear the faces of your loved ones, speak with their voices, tell you things that seem impossible to know, and every single word will be a lie wrapped in truth, designed to bind you tighter to forces that want nothing good for you. The dead don't speak through rituals and seances. They don't linger in basements or possess the living. When someone dies, they move beyond our reach, not to torture us, but because that's how the universe works. Our grief doesn't give us the right to drag them back. And God doesn't work on our timeline. I spent 4 years convinced he'd abandoned me, that he didn't care, that silence meant absence. I was wrong. He was there the whole time, waiting for me to stop demanding and start listening. Waiting for me to exhaust every wrong path so I'd finally be ready for the right answer. Judy is at peace. I know that now with certainty. Not because a demon told me, but because something infinitely greater confirmed it. She's okay. She's safe. She's loved. And I can finally let her go. 6 months after Guthrie, I walked into a church for the first time in 5 years. Not the Baptist church of my childhood, but a small community church in Hutchinson that I'd passed 100 times without really seeing. I sat in the back pew during a Wednesday evening service, listening to a pastor talk about grace and redemption and how God specializes in rebuilding broken things. When he asked if anyone needed prayer, I raised my hand. Afterward, the pastor, a woman named Sarah, probably 10 years younger than me with kind eyes, approached. "What's your name?" "Ray. Ray Haysbert." "What can we pray for, Ray?" I thought about all the things I could say. About Judy, about my journey through darkness, about the people I'd hurt. Instead, I said simply, "I need help learning how to live again." She smiled. "That's what we're all trying to figure out. But you don't have to do it alone." And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I believed that might actually be true. I still think about those encounters sometimes, the basements and farmhouses where I saw genuine evil, the people who suffered because of my obsession, the moment I almost said yes to permanent possession because I was so desperate for answers. But I also think about the light in Guthrie, about the presence that spoke with absolute authority and infinite compassion, about the way it destroyed demons with a single word while offering me grace I absolutely didn't deserve. The universe is more complicated than I thought when I was teaching religious studies. There are forces at work both darker and brighter than human theology fully captures. I've seen the worst of what exists in the shadows, but I've also seen the best, and the best is so much stronger. These days, I work with a support group for people who've lost loved ones. I help them process grief, warn them away from dangerous paths, and occasionally, very occasionally, help them recognize when something supernatural might actually be involved. I'm not a priest or an exorcist. I'm just someone who's been through the fire and came out the other side. Last week, a young man came to the group. His brother had died 6 months ago, and he'd been attending seances trying to make contact. He wanted to know if I thought the mediums were genuine. I looked him in the eye and said, "The dead don't come back, no matter how much we want them to. They move forward. And eventually, we have to do the same." "But I need to know he's okay," the young man said, voice breaking. "I understand, but you're looking in the wrong places. Trust that the universe is kinder than we think. Trust that love doesn't end with death. And trust that the answers we need aren't the same as the answers we want." He didn't look satisfied, but he nodded, and he stopped attending seances. Small victories. That's all any of us can hope for. I visit Judy's grave once a month. I bring flowers, sit on the grass and talk to her, not expecting a response. Not performing a ritual, just talking, the way I used to when she was alive. "I'm doing better," I told her last week. "Finally started dating someone. Her name's Rachel. She works at the library. You'd like her. She's got your sense of humor." The wind rustled through the cemetery trees. Just wind. No hidden messages, no supernatural signs. Just Kansas wind on a spring afternoon. And that was okay. Because the biggest lesson I learned from 4 years of hunting in darkness is this: the absence of signs doesn't mean the absence of grace. Sometimes the most profound answers come not through visions or voices or dramatic interventions, but through the simple truth that life goes on, that healing happens, that we're stronger than we think we are. Judy is at peace. I'm learning to be at peace. And the demons that once haunted my every step have been relegated to memory. Cautionary tales I share with others so they don't make my mistakes. I still carry scars from those encounters. Still wake up sometimes with the memory of that thing in Joplin invading my consciousness, or the light in Guthrie burning away darkness with absolute authority. Those experiences changed me in ways I'll never fully undo. But I'm not that broken, obsessed man anymore. I'm not Ray Haysbert the Seeker, the one who knocked on every forbidden door. I'm just Ray, learning to live, learning to love, learning to trust that the silence of heaven isn't cruelty, but sometimes the kindest answer we could receive. And if you're reading this because you're considering following a path like mine, investigating the occult, making contact with forces beyond human understanding, demanding answers from a universe that seems cruel and silent, I'm begging you, don't. The cost is higher than you can imagine. The demons are real. The danger is absolute. And the answers you think you need will destroy you in ways you can't foresee. But if you're reading this because you've already started down that path, because you've already opened doors you can't close, then know this: it's not too late to turn back. The light that intervened in Guthrie is still there, still powerful, still willing to pull people out of darkness. You just have to be willing to ask, with humility, with genuine need, without demands or conditions. Ask for help, and then be brave enough to accept it, even if it doesn't look the way you expected. This morning, I woke up from a dream. Not a nightmare, a dream. I was in the Colorado mountains, standing by a lake. Judy was there, smiling, looking the way she did before she disappeared. Happy. Whole. She didn't say anything, just waved. And I waved back. When I woke up, I wasn't sad. For the first time in 4 years, thinking about Judy didn't feel like a knife in my chest. It just felt peaceful. Maybe that's what healing looks like. Not forgetting, not moving on, but learning to hold the memory without letting it destroy you. I got up, made coffee, and drove to the church for the weekly support group. 7 people showed up, 3 regulars and 4 newcomers, all carrying grief they didn't know how to process. I told them my story. Not all of it. I left out the darkest parts, the encounters that would sound insane. But I told them about losing Judy, about the years of not knowing, about the obsessive search that nearly cost me everything. And I told them about finding peace, not through rituals or seances or knocking on forbidden doors, but through finally accepting that some questions don't have answers we can hold in our hands. She's okay, I said, and for the first time, I truly believed it. Wherever she is, whatever comes after this life, she's okay. And that has to be enough. One of the newcomers, a woman who'd lost her husband 3 months ago, started crying. How do you know? How can you be sure? I thought about the light in Guthrie, about the presence that spoke with absolute certainty, about the years I'd spent demanding proof and only finding more questions. Because I finally asked, I said, and I finally listened when the answer came. It wasn't much of an explanation, but it was true, and sometimes truth is the only comfort we can offer.